The camera never applauds, but it never forgets. At exactly 11:43 on a quiet Thursday night, Lucas Harrington sat alone inside the security operations room beneath the headquarters hotel of Harrington Capital. The building above him still sparkled with luxury as guests enjoyed late dinners, live piano music drifted through the marble lobby, and polished elevators carried visitors between elegant suites. Yet deep below the grand entrance, surrounded by rows of glowing monitors and the soft hum of powerful servers, the billionaire watched a world that no customer ever noticed. Hundreds of security cameras silently recorded every hallway, every dining room, every entrance, and every quiet corner of the property. Lucas had built his business on one simple belief. Numbers could be manipulated. Opinions could be influenced. Memories could fade. But cameras simply recorded what happened. Earlier that evening, an anonymous complaint had reached his desk claiming that several employees were ignoring guests during busy dinner hours. The accusation bothered him. Harrington Hospitality had earned its reputation through exceptional service, and Lucas refused to allow small failures to become larger ones. Instead of forwarding the report to department managers, he decided to review the footage himself. Daniel Ross, the hotel's security director, had already prepared the recordings before leaving for the night. Lucas preferred working alone. Silence helped him notice details that conversations often buried. He leaned forward, pressed play, and watched the restaurant dining room from 3 different camera angles. Guests entered. Families laughed together. Waiters delivered meals with practiced efficiency. Nothing seemed unusual. He increased the playback speed, moving through hours of ordinary business. Then something unexpected happened. A young waitress appeared near the far corner of the dining room. She wore a simple black uniform beneath a neatly pressed white apron, her blonde hair carefully tied back, moving through the crowded restaurant with calm confidence rather than hurried urgency. Lucas glanced briefly at the employee identification list displayed. Beside the video, Emily Carter, 28 years old. Part-time waitress. No disciplinary history. Nothing remarkable stood out inside her personnel file. Yet something about the footage made him slow the playback to normal speed. An elderly couple struggled to carry their trays toward a distant table. Before anyone asked for assistance, Emily quietly crossed the room, smiling warmly as she carried both trays without interrupting another employee's work. She adjusted the gentleman's chair, noticed the woman's walking cane beginning to slide toward the floor, picked it up before it could fall, wished them a pleasant evening, and returned to her section without waiting for thanks. No supervisor stood nearby. No guest applauded. The camera captured everything in complete silence. Lucas continued watching. Minutes later, a tired mother searched frantically inside her purse while comforting a crying little girl. Emily noticed immediately. She knelt beside the child, offered a clean coloring page and a small box of crayons from beneath the hostess stand, then quietly pointed toward the wallet resting beside a decorative plant where another customer had accidentally placed it. The mother smiled with visible relief. Emily simply nodded and walked away before receiving another word of gratitude. Lucas leaned closer to the screen. He replayed the moment once. Then again. Something about her behavior felt unusual. She never looked toward supervisors after helping someone. She never paused to receive compliments. Every thoughtful action appeared completely natural, almost invisible inside the rhythm of the restaurant. He opened another camera angle from 30 minutes later. Emily was there again. Different guest. Different situation. The same quiet kindness. Lucas rested one hand on the computer mouse, completely forgetting the anonymous complaint that had brought him downstairs in the first place. For the first time that evening, he stopped searching for mistakes. Instead, he found himself searching for the woman who seemed to appear wherever nobody else happened to be looking. Lucas closed the first recording and immediately opened another from the previous afternoon. Then another from the day before. He no longer searched by incident reports or guest complaints. Instead, he searched for one employee whose quiet presence had somehow begun drawing his attention more than every flashing security notification in the building. Emily Carter appeared again, always wearing the same neatly pressed black waitress uniform beneath her spotless white apron, always arriving a few minutes before her shift officially began. Every morning she walked through the employee entrance carrying a modest canvas tote bag and a reusable coffee cup that looked years old. She greeted the overnight security guard with the same warm smile she later offered the executive chef, the dishwasher, the maintenance crew, and every coworker who crossed her path. The cameras captured dozens of greetings every day, yet hers never looked rehearsed. They looked genuine. Lucas switched to footage from the employee break room. Most workers hurried through their meals before returning to busy dining hours. Emily quietly unpacked a homemade sandwich, took only a few bites, then noticed a young dishwasher searching his pockets with growing concern. Without hesitation she reached into her own lunch bag, handed him an apple and the unopened yogurt she had planned to eat herself, smiled gently, and returned to folding the napkin around what little remained of her lunch. She never looked toward the camera. She never expected anyone to notice. Lucas leaned back slowly. That afternoon another recording revealed Emily stopping outside the front entrance after finishing her shift. Instead of heading directly home, she waited patiently beside the curb until an elderly hotel guest successfully entered a taxi before walking toward the nearby city bus stop. Rain had already begun falling, yet she quietly held her umbrella over the older woman until the cab pulled away. Only afterward did she continue alone through the drizzle, lowering the umbrella because the wind had turned it inside out. Lucas enlarged the image just enough to see her expression. She was smiling. Not because someone had thanked her. No one had. She simply seemed content knowing another person had arrived safely. Curious now, Lucas opened her personnel file again. 8 years of employment. Never promoted. Never disciplined. Rarely absent. Performance reviews described her as dependable but ordinary. One line in particular made him pause. Consistently meets expectations. He looked back at the recordings covering the previous week. Ordinary employees met expectations. Emily quietly exceeded them every hour, often in ways no manager had documented. The next video showed her carefully helping a new waitress learn the ordering system during a busy lunch rush. Rather than taking over, Emily patiently encouraged the younger employee until she gained confidence. When the restaurant manager later complimented the smooth service, the new waitress received the credit. Emily simply continued clearing tables without correcting anyone. Lucas frowned. The pattern repeated itself throughout the footage. Whenever something good happened, someone else received recognition. Whenever a problem disappeared before reaching management, Emily had quietly solved it first. Yet her name rarely appeared in reports. Midnight slipped into 1 o'clock without Lucas noticing. The anonymous complaint that had started the evening now sat forgotten on the corner of his desk. Instead, he found himself asking a very different question. How could someone visible on nearly every camera inside his flagship hotel remain almost completely invisible inside the company that employed her? As another recording began playing automatically, Emily knelt beside a frightened little boy who had become separated from his parents. She calmly comforted him with a coloring page, spoke softly until he stopped crying, and stayed with him until his family arrived moments later. The relieved parents embraced their son before thanking the restaurant manager standing nearby. Emily had already walked quietly back toward the dining room, disappearing into the evening crowd before anyone realized she had been the first person to help. Lucas had reviewed security footage for years, but never like this. In the past, cameras existed to verify complaints, investigate accidents, or protect company property. Tonight they had become something entirely different. They were quietly introducing him to an employee he realized he had never truly seen. He opened the archive from 2 weeks earlier and instructed the system to display every available angle where Emily Carter appeared. One monitor became 4. 4 became 12. Hours of ordinary work unfolded in complete silence. Yet the more he watched, the less ordinary her days seemed. During the breakfast rush, Emily noticed a businessman rushing toward the elevators after leaving a leather portfolio beneath his chair. Before anyone else realized what had happened, she carefully secured the case behind the hostess stand, verified the guest's identity when he returned breathless several minutes later, and handed it back with nothing more than a warm smile. The grateful guest attempted to offer a generous cash tip. Emily politely declined, wished him a successful meeting, and returned to carrying coffee refills as though nothing remarkable had happened. Lucas replayed the exchange twice. The security camera captured the businessman thanking the restaurant manager before leaving. Emily had already disappeared into another section of the dining room. Another recording revealed a different afternoon. A new server accidentally entered the wrong order during an especially busy lunch period. Before frustration could spread across the dining room, Emily quietly prepared the correct table setting, apologized to the guests without placing blame on anyone, and coordinated with the kitchen so efficiently that the family never realized a mistake had occurred. Later that same day, the restaurant manager praised the team for maintaining excellent service despite the rush. Once again, Emily simply smiled alongside everyone else without mentioning that she had prevented a difficult situation from becoming a public complaint. Lucas leaned back in his chair. His company invested millions of dollars every year measuring guest satisfaction, training staff, and protecting the reputation of its hotels. Yet one waitress seemed to accomplish those goals naturally without asking for recognition. Curious, he opened reports from guest surveys completed over the previous 6 months. Dozens of comments praised exceptional kindness, thoughtful service, and memorable experiences. Very few mentioned employees by name. One handwritten comment caught his attention. A young waitress treated my father with such patience that he smiled for the first time since leaving the hospital. I never learned her name, but I will never forget her kindness. Lucas compared the date with the security recordings. Emily appeared beside an elderly gentleman recovering from knee surgery, quietly carrying his tray, adjusting his chair, and slowing her pace so he never felt rushed. She treated him with the same gentle respect she offered every guest regardless of appearance, age, or social status. There was no audience. No manager observing. No expectation of reward. The pattern continued hour after hour. Emily stayed a few extra minutes to help the evening shift begin smoothly. She organized supplies before anyone requested it. She noticed when flowers needed fresh water, when a child needed encouragement, when an exhausted coworker needed quiet support. The cameras recorded hundreds of small decisions that together created something far greater than efficient service. They revealed character. Lucas suddenly realized the anonymous complaint sitting on his desk had described employees who ignored guests. Emily had done exactly the opposite every single day. If one employee could be so completely misunderstood by reports and performance reviews, how many other truths inside his company had remained hidden simply because no one had taken the time to look beyond the paperwork? For the first time in many years, the billionaire closed his laptop instead of trusting the reports waiting in his inbox. Tomorrow, he decided, he would stop watching Emily through cameras alone. He wanted to see whether the remarkable woman captured by silent lenses was exactly the same when standing only a few feet away. The next afternoon Lucas arrived at the flagship hotel without informing a single executive. His driver stopped a block away from the main entrance, allowing him to walk the remaining distance like any ordinary guest. Instead of wearing the custom-tailored suit that usually announced his arrival before he spoke a word, he chose a simple charcoal sport coat, dark jeans, and comfortable leather shoes. A baseball cap rested low enough to keep curious eyes from recognizing one of the most familiar business leaders in the city. Daniel Ross knew only one detail. Lucas wanted complete privacy. No managers would receive advance notice. No employee would know the owner was inside the building. As the revolving doors turned quietly behind him, Lucas stepped into the elegant lobby where soft piano music floated through the air and afternoon sunlight reflected across polished marble floors. Guests checked in at the reception desk while families gathered around fresh flower arrangements, and the restaurant hummed with the familiar rhythm of lunch service. Nothing appeared unusual. That was exactly what Lucas wanted. He selected a small table near the center of the dining room where he could observe naturally without becoming the center of attention. Within minutes Emily appeared carrying a tray of iced tea and fresh bread for another family. She wore the same black waitress uniform beneath her neatly pressed white apron, her blonde hair tied carefully behind her head, her expression calm and welcoming. Lucas immediately noticed something the cameras could never fully capture. Every guest received direct eye contact. Every greeting sounded personal rather than memorized. She never hurried people through conversations even during busy moments, yet somehow every table continued moving smoothly. An elderly veteran entered using a walker and paused near the entrance while searching for a comfortable place to sit. Before the hostess finished checking the reservation list, Emily quietly adjusted 2 chairs to create additional space, carried a lightweight table closer to the aisle, and welcomed him with a gentle smile that reflected genuine respect rather than obligation. She completed each thoughtful action so naturally that nearby guests barely noticed anything had changed. Lucas watched the veteran relax almost immediately. A few minutes later, a young couple arrived carrying a sleeping infant inside a stroller. Without interrupting another server, Emily carefully moved a decorative stand to widen the pathway, offered warm water for baby bottles before they requested it, and quietly placed extra napkins beside their table. The parents exchanged grateful smiles with one another, never realizing that every small comfort had been anticipated before they asked. Lucas found himself smiling as well. Then something unexpected happened. A glass of iced lemonade slipped from a crowded tray carried by a nervous new employee. The drink spilled across the edge of an empty table, startling nearby guests but causing no injury. Before embarrassment could overwhelm the young server, Emily appeared beside her with fresh towels, reassuring words, and calm confidence. She quietly cleaned the table, thanked the waiting guests for their patience, and encouraged the new employee to take a slow breath before continuing. No blame. No criticism. Only quiet support. Moments later, the restaurant manager walked through the dining room, noticed everything already restored to perfect order, complimented the team for another smooth afternoon, and continued toward the kitchen without ever realizing who had solved the situation. Emily simply returned to serving coffee as though nothing remarkable had happened. Sitting only a few feet away, Lucas finally understood the greatest difference between a surveillance camera and standing inside the room. The camera recorded actions. Being present allowed him to feel their quiet impact. For the first time in many years, he realized that the true foundation of his company had never been marble floors, luxury suites, or impressive financial reports. It had always been ordinary people quietly choosing kindness when they believed no one important was watching. Lucas remained at the hotel long after the lunch crowd disappeared. Instead of returning to his office overlooking the city skyline, he quietly moved through different parts of the property as another anonymous guest. He visited the lobby cafe, the conference level, the executive lounge, and finally returned to the restaurant just before the evening shift began. Everywhere he looked, the same quiet pattern continued unfolding. Emily never searched for attention. She simply noticed people before problems had the chance to grow. Near the reception desk, a businessman struggled to calm an anxious client after discovering that an important presentation folder had been misplaced. Before frustration spread through the lobby, Emily approached with respectful confidence. She remembered seeing a similar folder beside a reading chair almost an hour earlier while delivering coffee to another guest. Within moments she returned with the folder exactly where she had left it for safekeeping. The relieved businessman thanked the front desk supervisor, believing the recovery had been organized by management. Emily simply wished them both a successful meeting and quietly walked back toward the restaurant before anyone thought to ask her name. Lucas watched the entire exchange from across the lobby. Later that afternoon he requested several months of guest compliment records from Daniel Ross without informing the hotel management team. Together they compared written guest comments with archived security footage. The results surprised even Daniel. Again and again, glowing reviews praising unforgettable service, thoughtful employees, and extraordinary hospitality traced back to moments where Emily had quietly stepped in before anyone else noticed a problem. Yet her name appeared almost nowhere in official recognition reports. Instead, commendations had consistently been credited to department supervisors or general team performance. Lucas frowned as another personnel document appeared on the monitor. Emily had never been nominated for Employee of the Month. She had never received a leadership recommendation. Her annual evaluations described her as dependable, cooperative, and consistent. Nothing more. How is that possible? Lucas asked quietly. Daniel studied the files before answering. Recognition usually comes through department managers, sir. Individual observations depend on who submits the reports. Lucas said nothing, but another question had already formed in his mind. The cameras had revealed Emily's actions. The paperwork revealed something equally important. Every meaningful contribution quietly disappeared before reaching executive leadership. That evening Lucas returned to the restaurant one final time. Emily had just finished helping an elderly couple gather their belongings after dinner. As they slowly walked toward the elevators, the woman paused and gently squeezed Emily's hand with grateful affection. No photographs captured the moment. No applause followed. Emily simply smiled with the same warmth Lucas had now witnessed dozens of times. A few minutes later the restaurant manager entered carrying a clipboard and congratulated the entire dining room staff for another successful evening. She thanked everyone collectively, assigned new closing responsibilities, and continued toward her office without mentioning Emily even once. Emily quietly accepted another list of duties while several coworkers prepared to leave for the night. Instead of complaining, she picked up fresh towels and began wiping tables beneath the soft glow of the dining room lights. Lucas remained hidden near the lobby entrance until she finally completed her shift almost an hour after everyone else. She collected her worn canvas bag, buttoned a simple jacket against the cool evening air, and walked alone toward the city bus stop without realizing that the owner of the entire company had spent 2 days learning more about her character than any executive report had ever managed to describe. Standing beneath the hotel canopy, Lucas understood that the greatest flaw inside his organization was not poor service. It was a leadership system that measured performance while quietly overlooking the people whose everyday kindness made excellence possible. The following Monday morning, Lucas called a meeting unlike any the company had held before. No announcement explained the agenda. No department received advance questions. Instead of inviting only senior executives, he requested the attendance of restaurant managers, hospitality directors, human resources representatives, and supervisors from every flagship property. The conference room overlooking the city slowly filled with familiar faces, each expecting another discussion about quarterly performance, occupancy rates, or customer satisfaction scores. Lucas entered carrying only a slim folder and a small remote control. His expression remained calm, but everyone immediately sensed that something unusual was about to happen. Without introducing financial charts or sales projections, he dimmed the lights and activated the large presentation screen. The first image showed an ordinary security recording from the restaurant. Emily quietly helping an elderly guest carry a tray. The second clip showed her returning a forgotten portfolio before an important business meeting. The third displayed her comforting a frightened child separated from his parents. Another revealed her helping a new employee recover confidence after making an honest mistake. None of the videos contained dramatic moments. They captured only everyday kindness. Yet as the recordings continued, the room became remarkably quiet. Lucas allowed each clip to finish before moving to the next. Then he displayed guest satisfaction surveys collected over several months. One by one, handwritten compliments describing patience, compassion, professionalism, and unforgettable service appeared beside the corresponding security footage. The names in the guest comments rarely matched the employee who had actually created those moments. Several managers shifted uncomfortably in their seats as they slowly recognized the pattern. Lucas spoke softly. These recordings were never meant to create heroes. They simply recorded ordinary work. What surprised me was not what the cameras saw. It was what our leadership failed to see. He opened another document showing annual evaluations. Emily's file described her as dependable, consistent, and cooperative. Nothing more. Lucas looked around the room before continuing. If this is how we describe someone who quietly protects our reputation every single day, then the problem is not with our employees. The problem is with the way we measure excellence. No one argued. No one interrupted. The silence carried more honesty than any explanation could have offered. Finally, Lucas asked that Emily join the meeting. She entered wearing her familiar black waitress uniform beneath her neatly pressed white apron. Clearly believing she had been called away from the restaurant because of a scheduling issue. She stopped near the doorway, surprised to find every senior leader standing inside the conference room. Lucas smiled warmly and invited her forward. "Emily, I have spent the past several days watching something extraordinary." She looked confused. "Sir, I do not understand." Lucas gently placed a stack of guest letters on the table beside her. "These people remembered your kindness. Our reports did not." Emily lowered her eyes, almost embarrassed by the attention. "I was only doing my job." Lucas shook his head gently. "No. You were doing something much greater. You were quietly protecting the values this company claims to believe in." Around the room, several managers nodded with genuine respect. The recognition felt different because it had not been created by speeches or ceremonies. It had been earned through hundreds of ordinary moments that almost everyone had overlooked. As sunlight streamed through the conference room windows, Lucas realized that leadership was not about discovering extraordinary people. It was about finally noticing the extraordinary character that had been standing quietly in front of him all along. When the meeting ended, no one hurried toward the elevators or reached for their phones. The executives remained seated, quietly reflecting on everything they had just witnessed. Lucas looked around the room and realized that the atmosphere had changed in a way no financial presentation had ever accomplished. For years they had measured performance through numbers, reports, and carefully designed evaluation forms. Yet a few hours of silent security footage had revealed more about the heart of the company than years of management meetings. Emily still stood near the conference table holding the stack of guest letters with both hands. She read only a few lines before gently closing the folder again. "I never knew anyone remembered those moments," she said softly. Lucas smiled. "People always remember how someone made them feel. They simply do not always remember the name." Several department managers exchanged thoughtful glances. One by one they admitted that many recognition programs depended almost entirely on supervisor recommendations rather than first-hand observation. A hospitality director quietly confessed that employees who worked without asking for attention often disappeared behind louder personalities. Nobody intended for it to happen, yet somehow it happened every day. Lucas walked toward the windows overlooking the city before turning back to the room. Today is not about correcting one employee's record. It is about changing the culture of this company. He announced the creation of a new leadership initiative that would encourage executives and managers to spend regular time working alongside frontline employees instead of relying only on written reports. Recognition would no longer depend solely on performance metrics. Quiet acts of integrity, compassion, teamwork, and initiative would become part of every evaluation. The announcement surprised everyone, including Emily. She hesitated before speaking. "Sir, if I may ask something." Lucas nodded. "Of course." She looked around the room with the same calm sincerity that had appeared in every camera recording. "Please do not build this because of me. Build it because there are many people here who do kind things every day when nobody notices." The room became silent once again. Even the senior executive seemed moved by the simplicity of her request. Lucas realized that this was exactly why she had remained invisible for so long. She had never worked for recognition. She had worked because kindness was simply part of who she was. Later that afternoon, Lucas walked through the restaurant once more. This time he did not hide beneath a baseball cap or sit quietly in the corner. Employees looked up with surprise as the owner entered the dining room, yet instead of inspecting operations, he greeted cooks, dishwashers, servers, hosts, and cleaners by name whenever he could. He thanked them individually for their work and paused to listen whenever someone spoke. Emily continued serving guests exactly as she always had. Nothing about her routine changed. She still carried trays with steady hands, welcomed every family with a warm smile, and quietly noticed small details before anyone asked for help. Watching from only a few feet away, Lucas understood something that no camera, report, or executive meeting could ever fully capture. excellence was not created during extraordinary moments. It was built through thousands of ordinary choices repeated with consistency, humility, and genuine care. As evening sunlight poured through the restaurant windows, reflecting across polished tables and crystal glasses, Lucas realized that the greatest investment he would ever make was not another luxury hotel or ambitious expansion. It would be creating a workplace where people like Emily were never invisible again.